بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Last week, alhamdulillah, we started Hadeeth Jibreel. Now before I forget, inshallah, next week there's no lesson. I've got a lecture in Nottingham, so there's no lesson next week. So that's an opportunity for anyone who's missed any lessons to catch up, and likewise for those who have been attending all the lessons to revise as well, inshallah. So just quickly, Riyadh, tell me one benefit we could take from Hadeeth Jibreel that we mentioned last week.
The manners of the student.
The manners of a student of knowledge. Give me an example.
You sit close to the teacher.
Sit close to the teacher. Give me another example.
You only ask them beneficial questions.
Only ask them beneficial questions. Give me another one.
You come like your best clothing, like
You come the best and appropriate clothing. Give me another one. Anything else? Somebody give me one more benefit. Not to waste their time. So we talked about how it's permissible to sit with people of knowledge with the condition that you do not waste their time. Okay. Okay. And Jibreel alayhi salam, when he called the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Muhammad. He called him by his name. Talha, why did he do that? He wanted to seem like he was a Bedouin. Good. Right. In the science of Hadith, in Mustalah al-Hadith, we had two terminologies, Mubham and Muhmal. Right. At the back. What's Mubham and Muhmal? Bilal?
unidentified mark. Unidentified mark. You know who he is, but you can't differentiate.
Okay, very good. So Mubham is when it's ambiguous, where it's just, a man came, a Bedouin came, but you don't know who it is at all. Whereas Muhmal is where the name is mentioned, but you can't differentiate between, who exactly it is. Somebody says Muhammad, right? Which Muhammad? Muhammad ibn this person or Muhammad this person? Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan al-Uyayna. You can't differentiate between them two. Okay, right. I'm going to keep the revision a bit short this lesson, because next lesson, inshallah, because you've got that extra week to revise, we'll do a bit more revision in the next lesson, inshallah. Right, who's memorized? Right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, sorry.
قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان قال أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسوله والقدر خيره وشره وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره.
وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. نعم. يلا.
قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان قال تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بقدره خيره وشره.
قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره.
Huh? There's only 2 lines. Which part? First line and second line. Do what you can. Yeah. Okay. Then 2 words. قال صدق.
قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان قال أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره قال صدق. قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان قال أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره قال صدق.
Okay, Ahsan. Right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we're now on page worksheet, page 152. Page 152 in the worksheet. So now the question posed to the Prophet ﷺ is, قال فأخبرني عن الإسلام. Inform me about Islam. Okay. Now, firstly, if you look at the wording chosen by Jibreel alayhi salam, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, أخبرني, inform me. Inform me. And that indicates towards the fact that this religion, whatever the Prophet ﷺ informs us of, it's not something that he is making up himself. Rather, it's something that he's informing us of from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not something that he's making up himself. Rather, whatever he is saying, then it is originally from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in, who knows which ayat? On the hadith, I should know. Which, what's the reference? Najm ayah 3 and 4. Good. Surah Najm ayah 3 and 4. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That he, Prophet ﷺ, does not speak from his own desires, rather it is revelation which has been revealed. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. He does not speak from his own desires. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. But rather it is revelation which has been revealed. Okay, now this question asked to the Prophet ﷺ is regarding Islam. What is Islam? Or inform me about Islam. The first 3 questions asked to the Prophet ﷺ is, the first, inform me about Islam, then inform me about Iman, and then inform me about Ihsan. These 3 are known as the 3 levels of the religion. They are known as the 3 levels of the religion. That's why it's written over here. Now we are going to learn about the 3 levels of the religion. This is very important to understand, as it is from the basics of the religion. Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi, he said, and most people have erred in this issue. Yani, a lot of people make a mistake when it comes to understanding these 3 levels and the details regarding these levels and the explanations of them. So, especially since this is from the foundational issues of the religion, every single Muslim should know what they are. Now you can see here this pyramid over here. This pyramid basically illustrates the different levels of the religion. Now some ulama, they do it in terms of circles and so on, but what seems to be easier to understand is this pyramid, right? So the lowest level of the religion is Islam. So, and the person who's on that level, he's known as a Muslim. So the lowest level is Islam, and a person who is on that level is known as a Muslim. Then the second level is Al-Iman. And a person who is on that level is known as a Mu'min. He's known as a Mu'min. Or it's the plural, Mu'minun. Right? Or sometimes Mu'minin in the Quran. And then the third is Al-Ihsan. The third level is Al-Ihsan. And a person who is on that level is known as a Muhsin. He is known as a Muhsin. Now, so we have Islam, Iman, and then Ihsan. And as you can see, the biggest of these 3 levels is the bottom one, the first one, which means most people are upon that level. Most people are on that level of Islam. Then we have a high level, which is Iman, and that now becomes smaller, meaning that less people are upon the second level. And then the third level, Al-Ihsan, is right at the top, showing that the least amount of people, or the least level, or the level in which it has the least amount of people, is the third level, which is Al-Ihsan. Now, inshallah, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these levels, inshallah. Because as the Prophet ﷺ is being asked, he's being asked about each of them. I will go through what each of them mean and their pillars and explain them, inshallah. But on the next page, somebody may say that what are some other proofs regarding this differentiation? That some people are on this level as a Muslim, then some people are mu'min, and some people are a muhsin. Now, obviously, the dalil, the proof is clear from Hadith Jibreel itself. Okay, but we can also find other ayat, and I mentioned 2 of them in the next page. The first of those ayat is ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. And now they start. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Some people, they have wronged themselves. وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. And there are some who follow a middle course. وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And some are foremost in good deeds by Allah's will. ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْكَبِيرُ. And that truly is a great bounty. So in this is the 3 levels. Now this ayah, inshallah, we'll discuss in a bit more detail, probably next lesson, inshallah. But as you can see, those who have wronged themselves are those people who have accepted Islam, but they have a lot of sins and so on. So they're on the lowest level, but still Muslim. Then you have those who are in the middle, meaning they are those that they do that which is obligatory upon them and they stay away from that which is prohibited, and they are on the second level of being believers, mu'minun. And then the third level is al-ihsan, which is وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ, and those who are foremost in good deeds. Those people are not only do that which is obligatory upon them, but they also do that which is mustahab or mandub or sunnah, that which is recommended. And not only do they stay away from that which is prohibited, they also stay away from that which is makruh, that which is disliked. So you can see in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He splits the Muslims into three levels. Also, if you look below, we have another ayah. قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Arabs, they said, آمَنَّا, we have iman. And we believe, and from the word iman. قُل, Allah commands the Prophet ﷺ to say, لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا, you have not believed, you do not have iman. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا, but say we have submitted, say we have Islam. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ, and iman has not entered into your hearts yet. These people had said, we have iman. And Allah commands the Prophet to tell these people, no, you've just accepted Islam. You're not on the level of iman yet. You're not on the second level yet. You're still on the first one. You're on Islam. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمَا, say أسلمنا, say that we have accepted Islam. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ, but iman hasn't truly been engraved within your hearts yet. So you're on the first level, you're not yet on the second level. But later on, they can easily go to the second level. So that's a proof showing that Islam is built upon these three levels. Now we'll start with the first of these three levels, which is Islam. Now when Jibreel alayhi salam asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam regarding the meaning, regarding Islam, he said, أخبرني عن الإسلام, inform me about Islam. Now the answer of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was with the pillars of Islam. Till the end of the paragraph, right? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned the 5 pillars of Islam. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't define Islam itself. And the definition of Islam itself isn't something difficult. However, people have made it difficult because people like to speak about the religion without any knowledge. So if a non-Muslim was to ask a Muslim what is the meaning of Islam, many of them would say Islam means peace. Right? But that's not the case. Islam does not mean peace. It doesn't. Right? Do we say to one another Assalamu alaikum, or do we say Al-Islamu alaikum? Assalamu alaikum. It's a different word. The root word salima is different to the root word aslama. Islam is from the word aslama. So if Islam does not mean peace, if it did, that means someone sits at home all day, doesn't do anything, it doesn't harm anyone, so he enters Jannah. Doesn't pray, it doesn't matter. He's peaceful. No, it doesn't mean that. But rather, Islam, or the word aslama, means to submit and to surrender. Aslama means to surrender. Okay? Now, if you understand the linguistic meaning of that word, then you understand, the Islamic concept of what Islam is, which is surrendering to Allah. Surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what the ulama have given a definition of what Islam is, and I mentioned this definition over here. Okay, the scholars have said that Islam is al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed wal-inqiyadu lahu bit-ta'ah wal-bara'atu min ash-shirki wa ahlihi. It is submitting to Allah by way of tawheed, surrendering one's full self to Him by way of obedience, and staying away from shirk and his people. Right? We'll go through each phrase or each part of this definition. The first part is to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by way of tawheed. What's the proof for this? I mentioned one ayah, but in reality, the ayat are many. So here, وَمَن يُسْلِمْ وَجْهَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ, whoever fully submits themselves to Allah. Look at the word yuslim. Aslama yuslim. Right? It doesn't mean whoever's peaceful with Allah. La. Whoever surrenders to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and there's many other ayat that have the word aslama. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, and the reality of Islam is to surrender to Allah, not other than Him. And that is the meaning of La ilaha illallah. He also said, Al-Islam consists of submission to Allah alone, surrendering to Him, and servitude to Allah alone. So that's the first part. The second part is to surrendering oneself, one's full self to him by way of obedience. By way of obedience. Now, what the second phrase and the third phrase is more of an explanation of what the first part necessitates. You know, the first part, surrendering to Allah with Tawheed. Okay? Now, with Tawheed. So we surrender fully to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Tawheed, meaning without associating any partners with Him, only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone in every action, in our worship, in our beliefs, in affirming His names, attributes, whatever the case may be. Now, the second part of this definition and the third part is what this first part necessitates. So the second part says that surrendering oneself, one's full self to Him by way of obedience. Meaning, if you surrendered yourself to Allah, then that would necessitate that you be obedient to Allah. Whatever He's commanded you to do, you do. And whatever He's prohibited you from doing, you stay away from. So if there's a person, he says, I've surrendered to Allah and I accept that Allah is my Lord, but then he's not doing any act of obedience, he's not praying Salah, for example, then his Islam is deficient. Right? Because that surrendering is deficient. That's not true surrendering. That if Allah is commanding you to do something and then you don't do it, you've not surrendered fully to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why there are many ayat that we are commanded to obey Allah and obey the Prophet ﷺ and stay away from what they have prohibited. And we took many of these ahadith and ayat and statements of the Salaf in the hadith dawrah that we did previously. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, whoever has humility for Allah, He will raise him. Allah will raise that person. So whoever has humility in front of Allah, acknowledging that he's nothing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he lowers himself in front of Allah. But because he is lowering himself and surrendering himself to Allah, the All High, Allah will raise this person. So what does Ibn Qayyim say? Whoever has humility for Allah, He will raise him. Therefore, whoever has arrogance over the truth, over obedience to the truth, Allah will humiliate him, degrade him, and belittle him. Arrogance is from the greatest factors which prevents a person from abiding by the religion. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, the third reason, he's mentioning a number of reasons. He's mentioning a number of reasons which prevents a person from fulfilling acts of obedience. He says the third reason, قِيَامُ مَانِعٍ, which is that a preventative will come which will prevent a person from doing so. وَهُوَ إِمَّا حَسَدْ أو كِبْرٍ, which is either jealousy or arrogance. وَذَلِكَ مَانِعٌ وَمَانِعُ إِبْلِيسِ مِنْ انْقِيَادِ الْأَمْرِ, and that is what prevented Iblis from fulfilling the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He was commanded to do so. وَهُوَ دَاءُ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ إِلَّا مَنْ عَصَمَ اللَّهِ, and that is the disease of the earlier people and the later people, except for those whom Allah has protected. وَبِهِ تَخَلَّفَ الْإِيمَانِ عَنِ الْيَهُودِ, and due to this arrogance and jealousy, تَخَلَّفَ الْإِيمَانِ عَنِ الْيَهُودِ, the Jews did not accept this iman. الَّذِينَ شَاهَدُوا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم, those who witnessed the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, وَعَرَفُوا صِحَّةَ نُبُوَّتِهِ, and they knew the correctness of his prophethood, وَمَنْ جَرَى مَجَرَاهُمْ, and also whoever has followed in the footsteps. And then we come to the third part of the definition, staying away from shirk and its people. And this is basically the opposite of the first phrase, right? That how do we surrender to Allah with Tawheed, which is staying away from shirk and staying away from the people of shirk. Staying away from shirk, because shirk is the greatest sin, that sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive. And in other lessons like Rasulullah and so on, we've talked about shirk and its dangers. And if it does come up in this book, we'll talk about it in a bit more detail, inshallah. And also staying away not only from shirk, but from the people of shirk. Now, what does it mean to stay away from the people of shirk? Does that mean, right, you can never, you can't go outside your house in the UK? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that a person stays away from the people of shirk in three ways. By firstly, with their heart, secondly, with their tongue, and thirdly, with their limbs. With their heart, by acknowledging that what they are upon is different to what you are upon. And that what you are upon is the truth, which is to surrender to Allah. And what they are upon is falsehood. And that whoever dies upon surrendering to Allah truly by accepting Islam, he will be in paradise. And whoever does not accept Islam will not be in paradise, rather he'll be in the hellfire. So you have that belief of Islam basically. The second is by the tongue. By the tongue meaning, you clearly say to them, you don't try to just, as some people try to water down the religion and try to compromise on the fundamentals of the religion. لا. What does Allah say in Surah Kafirun? لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد. But the Prophet is commanded to clearly say to the mushrikun, لا أعبد ما تعبدون. I do not worship that which you worship. ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد. Nor do you worship what I worship. Different religion. Let's not try to act like we're on the same religion. Okay? Obviously, does that mean you don't have good manners with them? No, it doesn't mean that. Obviously, you have good manners, you give them da'wah and so on, which we're going to talk about in a second, right? But as some people have started to say, is that everyone's right, everyone will enter into paradise and things like that. That's completely wrong. Rather, Islam is different to all of the other religions, and whoever accepts Islam will enter paradise, and whoever doesn't will not enter paradise. And then the third is with the limbs. What does it mean with the limbs? How do you stay away from people who shirk with the limbs? Meaning, when it comes to them doing acts of disobedience, acts of evil, then we stay away from them and we don't participate in them. If they are celebrating this, festivals of shirk, like celebrating Christmas, which is, a celebration of shirk, then you do not participate in that. Likewise, if they are drinking alcohol, you do not participate in that, and so on, right? So we stay away from the people of shirk with all of these three, with our hearts, with our tongues, and with our limbs. Now, when it comes to this, there are three types of people when it comes to applying these three things. There's two extremes of those in the middle. One extreme doesn't apply any of this, and they intermingle with them, and it's as though they are part of them. They say what they say, they participate in all of their evil, and he doesn't give any importance to staying away from the people of shirk. Then you have the other extreme that transgress the boundaries, and what they'll do is that they will start harming the non-Muslims, or they will not uphold their promises or the contracts that they have signed with them, and things like that. That's another extreme. Then you have those in the middle. Who are those in the middle? Those that have good manners with them, those that interact with them, those that give da'wah to them, but at the same time, they don't cross the boundaries. So they don't participate in their festivals, they don't participate in that which is haram, they don't aid them in their disbelief, and so on. And this issue is known as al-wala wal-bara. This issue here is known as al-wala wal-bara, which translates to, there's different ways of translating it. Some translate it as allegiance and disallegiance. Some translate it as loving for the sake of Allah and hating for the sake of Allah, and so on. All of them are correct. And there's many ayat, and وَقَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ مِّمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي. Ibrahim alayhi salam clearly said, I am free from what you are worshipping, to his father, except إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, except for the one who has created me, and so on. Anyways, this is the meaning of Islam, okay, which is to surrender to Allah, or to surrender to Allah, to submit to Him by way of obedience, and stay from shirk and his people. Right, on page 156, we have one issue here, which is the religion is the only religion, the religion, i.e. religion of Islam, is the only religion which is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's many ayat, right? So anyone who says that somebody's a Jew or a Christian, they will also enter into paradise, that is completely incorrect, and it goes against that which is clearly mentioned within the Quran. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Inna deena indallahi al-Islam. Verily the religion with Allah is Islam. I.e. the accepted religion with Allah is Islam. Inna deena indallahi al-Islam. Verily the religion according to Allah is Islam. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقَبَلَ مِنْهُ. That whoever wants a religion other than Islam, فَلَنْ يُقَبَلَ مِنْهُ, it will not be accepted from him. Allah will not accept that religion. So the only religion which is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the religion of Islam, and no other religion. And the second point on this page is that it's obligatory to love this religion. It's an obligation to love this religion and everything that this religion has come with. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says in a bit of a long statement, he says, Al-qulubu mafturatun ala al-iqrari billahi tasdiqan bih. The hearts have been naturally created to believe in Allah, wa deenan lah, and to have that as a religion. لكن يعرض لها ما يفسدها. However, things can come to a person which will nullify this, or which will corrupt this, i.e. this natural acceptance of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ومعرفة الحق تقتضي محبته. And knowing the truth necessitates that you love it. And knowing the truth necessitates that you love it. ومعرفة الباطل تقتضي بغضه. And knowing falsehood necessitates that you dislike it. And knowing the falsehood necessitates that you dislike it. لما في الفطرة من حب الحق وبغض الباطل. Due to what Allah has naturally placed in a person from loving the truth and hating the falsehood. لكن قد يعرض لها ما يفسدها. But again, things can come which can corrupt this. إما من الشبهات التي تصدها عن التصديق بالحق. Either doubts which will prevent a person from believing the truth, وإما من الشهوات, or desires which will prevent a person from following the truth. So it's an obligation to also love the religion, and inshallah we'll talk a bit more about this when we talk about the conditions of La ilaha illallah. Right, on the next page, so that's the meaning of Islam. That's the meaning of Islam. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ in Hadeeth Jibreel, when he was asked what was his answer, he mentioned the 5 pillars of Islam, right? So as you can see on page 157, we've put the text there, which is when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, inform me about Islam, he mentioned, أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. Islam is that you should testify that there is no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah, till the end of the 5 pillars. Now, these 5 pillars come in a separate hadith, which is hadith number 3 in this book. Hadith number 3 in this book, the Prophet ﷺ said, Islam is built upon 5. And he mentioned the 5 pillars. So therefore, because it's going to come again in the following hadith, right now we're not going to explain the 5 pillars of Islam. Alright, we're just going to go over them for now. Because if you explain it now, then nothing's left for hadith number 3. Right? So we'll skip over this section for now. And then we'll explain the 5 pillars properly in detail once we come to the next hadith, which is hadith number 3. So that's why, if you go to the next page now, hadith, page number 158, قال صدقت. Jibreel alayhi salam says to the Prophet صدقت, you have spoken the truth. So Umar says, فَعَجِبْنَا لَهُ يَسْأَلُهُ وَيُصَدِّقُهُ. We were astonished at his, فَعَجِبْنَا لَهُ, at him. We were astonished at him by him questioning the Prophet ﷺ and then telling him that he was right. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ a question, inform me about Islam. The Prophet ﷺ gave him the answer, the 5 pillars of Islam. So now he said to the Prophet that you're right. He said to the Prophet that you're right. Okay, even if it wasn't a Prophet, when you ask somebody a question, or if you ask a teacher a question, normally what happens is that the student doesn't know, so he asks the teacher, and the teacher gives him the answer, right? So the fact that Jibreel alayhi salam, he turned around and he said, you're right. Okay, that confused the companions. It doesn't make sense. If you ask a question, right, you don't know what's right and wrong. You take the answer the Prophet has given and you believe it. So this confused the companions radiallahu anhum. But this shows us something. Obviously, at this time, why the companions were confused is because they didn't know it was Jibreel alayhi salam. They didn't know. They thought it was a random man, right? But what this shows us is that, that's another benefit from the hadith, is that sometimes a person may ask a question that he already knows the answer to, but so that he can benefit other people. A person may ask a question that he already knows the answer to, but he asks it so that other people can benefit. So Jibreel alayhi salam knew the answer. And the reason he asked these questions, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned at the end of the hadith, أَتَاكُمْ يُعَلِّمُكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. He came to teach you your religion. He came to teach you your religion. So he knew the answers. But why did Jibreel alayhi salam ask the questions? So that the Prophet ﷺ can answer these questions, and others can, and the rest of the companions can learn and benefit from the questions of Jibreel alayhi salam. Then Jibreel alayhi salam moves on to the next question. On the next page, 159, قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان. He said, inform me about Iman. Inform me about Iman. Salat ko, Pastor. Here I've already written something. Now, when it comes to Iman, we are going to go into a bit more detail. So for that reason, I've typed out a lot more stuff to make it easier for you guys. Okay. So if you read the explanation was written, it says here, Jibreel alayhi salam asks the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam regarding Iman. Iman is an important topic and concept, and it is vital that a person understands it correctly. It is the highest objective that each believer tries to solidify and complete. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, Allah has ordered his book, the Quran, upon Iman with approximately 100 qualities, different parts of Iman. Allah in the Quran mentions different parts of Iman. Each quality is better than the world and what is in it. There are also many people who have deviated in this topic, i.e. there are many people who have not correctly understood what is Iman. And due to their incorrect understandings, they have deviated and they've caused a lot of corruption throughout the Islamic Ummah, throughout history. For example, those that killed Uthman radiallahu anh are those who erred in this issue. Likewise, a lot of people who have watered down the religion or use excuses to say that I can do what I want, you're not to judge me, and they use that as an excuse just to do a lot of sin, it's because they have erred in this issue, right? So therefore, we will study Iman in some depth, inshallah. So, bi'idhnillah, we're going to study Iman in depth, what it is, what are the principles regarding it, how to increase it, and some other issues regarding it. As for talking about other sects and what they believe and why they believe it and how to refute that, I'm still thinking, should I add that or not? I know Riyadh won't say, but I'm still thinking about that, inshallah. I don't want to make it too long. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ was asked by Jibreel alayhi salam regarding Iman. Now, the answer that the Prophet ﷺ gave was the 6 pillars of Iman. So how many pillars of Islam are there? 5. How many pillars of Iman are there? There are 6. Before we go through the pillars, I want to talk about Iman itself. Now, what is Iman and rulings pertaining to Iman itself? Then once we've gone through that, and I'll probably take 2 lessons, this lesson and next lesson. Once we've done that, then inshallah, we can go through individually each of the pillars of Iman. Just like we did with Islam. Define Islam, then go through the pillars of Islam, the 5 pillars. Obviously, we didn't explain it this time because it's coming in the next hadith. But we will do the same thing with Iman. Explain what is Iman, issues pertaining to Iman, and then go through the pillars of Iman, inshallah. So, the first thing that we want to do is define Iman. What is the meaning of Iman? Linguistically, firstly, we have to explain what is the meaning of Iman linguistically. Many of the people of knowledge have defined Iman linguistically to mean at-tasdiq. At-tasdiq, we could say, to believe. To believe. You see where it says that the 2 brackets and there's a line. That's where you try the translation of tasdiq, which is to believe. No. To believe / confirm. To believe / confirm. Depending on the context, it can be both. Right. Then it says here, however, when it is critically examined, it can be seen that Iman is not just belief by itself or confirmation by itself. But rather, Iman is tasdeequn wa ziyada. It is a confirmation and something extra. It is a confirmation of belief and something extra. Right. What does that mean? That means that it's not just, to believe something, that's it. Well, a lot of people believe a lot of things, but obviously, how much you believe in it and how strong that belief is, there's different things, right? Different levels. When you look at the word Iman itself, then Iman doesn't just mean to believe. It means having a confirmation of belief with something extra. What that extra thing is, the ulama have different words that they use to define what the extra thing is. But let's mention one, which is Ar-Raghib al-Asfahani. Ar-Raghib al-Asfahani, he says, قال تعالى, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا وَلَوْ كُنَّا صَادِقِينَ. In Surah Yusuf, ayah number 17, the brothers of Yusuf, after they threw him into the well, and they tried to lie to their father, they said to their father, وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا وَلَوْ كُنَّا صَادِقِينَ. You are not going to have Iman in us, even if you were telling the truth. You are not going to have Iman in us, even if you are telling the truth. He says, Raghib al-Asfahani, after mentioning this hadith, this ayah, he says, it is said that it means بِمُصَدِّقٍ لَنَا. You don't have Iman in us, you do not believe us. However, أن الإيمان هو التصديق الذي معه أمل. Iman is that confirmation of belief that has tranquility with it. That has tranquility with it. Okay. What does that mean? What he means is that if you look at the ayah, they've gone to their father and they've tried to lie to their father, right? And the father's not believing it. They said, you will not have Iman in us, meaning you won't have that true contentment in your heart with whatever we say. You may turn around and say, okay, I believe you. But there's always going to be that few percentages of doubt in your heart regarding what we are saying. Right? So Raghib al-Asfahani, from this ayah, what's he extracting? He's saying, look, it can't just mean belief, right? They won't believe us. No, it's that true belief which has contentment, right? Like, for example, if I just said to you, I went to the shop and I bought this pen for £1, right? Okay, and I've clearly told you, and it looks like a £1 pen and everything, right? You will have Iman in that, meaning, okay, you believe it, you have no issue whatsoever, you're content, right? Inshallah, I'm trustworthy, so, you feel accept what I say, okay? But if I came around and I said to you, I bought this for £1,000, even if you turn around and say, we believe you, some of you will go online and do a double check, right? Those people that do that double checking, they don't have Iman in what I just said. So you see a difference between just having normal belief and having a true conviction, or a belief with contentment without any doubt. So that's the actual meaning of the word Iman. And that's very important because even some of the people who have deviated from the Murji'ah, they'll try to use the linguistic definition to prove what they are doing, which if I mention those points, it doesn't matter what the linguistic meaning is, because the issue here is an Islamic issue. But even if you were to go through the linguistic meaning, it doesn't just mean belief and that's it. Like I said, belief with contentment, with true conviction, and so on. And that is a completely different thing. That is a completely different thing. If I mention that, then we can go into more detail regarding that, inshallah. Okay, that's the linguistic meaning. What's the Islamic meaning of Iman? Very important. What's most important is not the linguistic meaning of a word, but the Islamic meaning. Okay? For example, the word salah linguistically means dua. The word salah literally means dua, means supplication, or sometimes prayer. Right? But if I say you have to pray 5 times a day, does that mean make dua 5 times a day? No, it doesn't. It's a 5 daily prayers, right? So we have to take the Islamic context and the Islamic meaning into consideration, and not the linguistic one. Okay, so here the Salaf have all agreed that the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah after them, that Iman is qawlun wa amal, speech and action. You find a lot of their statements when they were from the Salaf, right? The earlier scholars of Islam, the greatest of the believers, right? You'll find that if they were asked about Iman, or they were talking about Iman, the answer would be that Iman is qawlun wa amal. Iman is speech and action. Iman is speech and action, right? And by the way, I know some of you might have heard another definition, even at also the start, so we're going to get to that definition shortly, right? Just stay with me on this definition for now. Okay. Now, what do they mean by speech and action? Right? This word is speech and action is a very summarized way of defining Iman. Okay? Let's open it up a bit more and see exactly what they mean. I've written underneath it, i.e., speech of the heart and tongue and actions of the heart and limbs. Speech of the heart and tongue and the actions of the heart and limbs. What does that mean? To have Iman, you have to have speech of the heart. What does it mean, speech of the heart? That's the belief of the heart. That means the belief of the heart. Okay? So you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you believe in the messages that He sent, you believe in the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you believe in the books that He brought down, and all. Okay? Then you have speech of the tongue. Speech of the tongue is saying the shahadatain. Saying ashhadu wa la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Saying the two testimonies. Okay? A person who has the ability to say them and has not said them, then he does not enter into Islam, even if he has that belief. He has to say it. Then we have actions of the heart. Actions of the heart are those actions like having the fear of Allah, having hope of Allah, having the love of Allah, having reliance upon Allah, having the fear, khashya, the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of those actions are actions of the heart. You know, those actions take place where? In the heart. Then we have actions of the limbs. Actions of the limbs, which is all of the actions, praying salah, giving charity, saying good words, all the actions, they are considered actions of the limbs. You can see from this definition, it includes everything basically. Everything that a person could do, whether it's to do with the heart or his tongue or his physical actions, all of them are included within this definition. So if a person was to just say, like many of the Salaf have said, qawlun wa amal, then it includes all of them. Okay? Now we do have some important points regarding this. The first important point is that the majority of the scholars, when they define Iman, they split Iman into these four types that we have done. So these four parts, right? Which is what? Speech of the heart and tongue, and actions of the heart and limbs. These four. Okay? However, some ulama have done it in different ways. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he splits it into five. In his book Al-Aqeedah Al-Wasitiyah, he splits it into five. He adds something. He adds something. He adds actions of the tongue. Actions of the tongue. Right? And he basically differentiated between, you know, when we said actions of the limbs, we included the tongue. Okay? Which is saying any good word, doing any dhikr, any tasbih. He split it and made it into two. Okay? So he made it into five. But is there a difference in what he's saying or we're saying? No. There's no difference. Right? So when we say if somebody recites the Quran, Ibn Taymiyyah would say that will come under the actions of the limbs, actions of the tongue. We would say that comes under action of the limbs because the tongue is a limb. The tongue is a limb. The only time when we separated the tongue is when we wrote speech of the tongue. And that's only because we are specifying the two shahadas. But you can't accept Islam or enter into the religion of Islam except by saying the two shahadas. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah did it into five ways. And then there's another way that some ulama have split it, which is into three. Some have done it into three. And they've said, Iman is belief in the heart, speech upon the tongues, and actions upon the limbs. Okay? Into three. Belief in the heart, speech upon the tongues, and action upon the limbs. What have they subtracted from the four? Who can work it out? Actions of the heart. Right? So the actions of the heart, they either add it into the belief of the heart, but I believe more likely they add it into the later part, which is action of the limbs. Because the belief in the heart is actually belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. As for the fear and everything else, they'll add it into the actions of the limbs. So it's still the same thing. Whether you do three, whether you do four, whether you do five, whether if somebody comes out with a sixth one, there's no problem. Okay? The main point is that it has to have all of the points that we mentioned. As long as the speech and action, as long as they have that, in whichever way you explain it, it's all correct. And this way of splitting into three has been mentioned by some of the Salaf as well. It's mentioned by Abu Thawr. It's mentioned by Abu Thawr. And this way of splitting into three types is the definition which has become more famous amongst the later scholars. So that's why most of the time if you would study Usul Thalatha or if you would study Aqidah and Iman, most people would now, in this time, give you the definition of these three. Okay? And not mention the 4 or 5. Mainly because it's a bit more easier to understand. But anyways, what I want you guys to learn now for this lesson is the way we mentioned it in the beginning, 4. And you don't need to memorize what was added for 5 or what was taken away for 3. Don't worry about that. Just know that some have said 5, some said 3. Just know the way I've explained it, which is the 4 part. That's enough, inshallah. Okay, if you're getting confused, forget the rest. If you can't do the rest, then that's good. Right, that is the first point. The second point, defining Iman as speech and actions has become from the symbols of Ahlul Sunnah. You know, if you would ask somebody what is Iman, from the sign that a person from Ahlul Sunnah is that he defines it by saying Iman is qawlun wa amal. Iman is speech and action. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, وَلِهَذَا كَانَ الْقَوْلُ. This is why the statement إِنَّ الْإِيمَانَ قَوْلٌ وَعَمَلٌ. Verily Iman is speech and actions. Verily Iman is speech and actions. عند أهل السنة, according to Ahl Sunnah, min sha'a'ir as-sunnah, is from the symbols of the Sunnah. This is why the statement that verily Iman is speech and action. Verily Iman is speech and action, according to Ahl Sunnah, is from the symbols of the Sunnah. According to Ahl Sunnah, is from the symbols of the Sunnah. The third point, how many shu'ab of Iman are there? Shu'ab means how many parts of Iman are there? There's a book by Imam al-Bayhaqi titled Shu'ab al-Iman. Now, there's a slight difference of opinion regarding how many, and that's because there's a difference when it comes to the different narrations. In a narration in Bukhari, the Prophet said, Al-Imanu bid'un wa sittuna. Iman is 60 odd branches, or 60 odd parts. And in Muslim, Al-Imanu bid'un wa sab'un. And in Muslim, Iman is 70 odd. Okay, and there's also other narrations as well. So due to this, some have said 60 odd and some have said 70 odd. The word bid'ah means any number between 3 and 9. So, or 3 and 10. So therefore, bid'un wa sab'un, 70. In English, this is 70 odd. Anyways, what does it mean by different parts? It means that Iman consists of many different things. Right? It's not just one thing that you do and you have Iman. But there's different actions and different things that a person does. All of that is a part of a person's Iman. And we're going to mention the Hadith. I've mentioned it in the worksheets later on. But in the Hadith, the Iman is 60 odd or 70 odd parts. Prophet says, فَأَفْضَلُهَا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. The best of it, the best part of Iman is saying La ilaha illallah. وَأَدْنَاهَا إِمَاطَةُ الْأَذَى عَنِ الطَّرِيقِ. And the lowest is removing something harmful from the street. وَالْحَيَاءُ شُعْبَةٌ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. And modesty, shyness is also a part of Iman. So you can see how there's different parts and different types of Iman. So we shouldn't have a narrow understanding of what Iman is. That's just belief in Allah and that's it. No, there's different parts to it. Okay, and we'll study some of them later, inshallah. Right. The fourth point regarding this, what is the difference between Islam and Iman? Now, Islam and Iman are two words. The ulama say that these two words, right, they are from those words. The ulama say, إذا اجتمعت افترقت وإذا افترقت اجتمعت. What does that mean? When they are united, they separate. But when they are separate, they unite. What does that mean? When they are together, they're separate. When they're separate, they're together. But what that means is, let's go through it. It says, when they are united, yani when they are together, they are separate. When they are together, they are separate. Meaning, when the words are mentioned together, then they both have two different meanings. When the words are mentioned together, let's say in the same sentence, or in the same context, or in the same passage, then they have two different meanings. But when the words are mentioned separately, then they both mean the same thing. Meaning, for example, if one day I'm giving a lecture and I just say to you, a Muslim is a person who does X, Y, and Z. And then a few weeks later, I say to you, a mu'min is a person who does, ABC, few different things. Am I differentiating between what the meaning of Islam and Iman is? No, same thing. Islam, Iman, both referring to somebody who's accepted the religion of Islam, somebody who believes in Allah, that's it, right? But if I say in the same sentence, let's say I ask you a question, are you a Muslim or a mu'min? Are you on the level of Islam or on the level of Iman? Now we differentiate, okay, it's talking about two different levels. It's talking about two different things. Does that make sense? Yeah? Huh. So that's what we're saying. We're saying that if they're separate, then they include both of one another. So I say to you, are you a believer? Are you a believer? Right? So if I just say it generally, if I say, are you a mu'min? Right? It means I'm just generally, without it being in the context of aqidah, showing that I'm differentiating between the words, and they both mean the same thing. Okay. But if I say to you, are you a Muslim or a mu'min? Okay. Then we say, okay, there's a difference between the two. Now, what is that difference between the two? That's the next part. Okay. Just before I mention the difference between the two, another example of words like, there are many words like this. Okay. That when they are separate, they mean the same thing. When they're together, they mean two different things. An example is al-faqir al-miskin. Al-faqir means poor person. Miskin means poor. Right? They both mean the same thing. Okay. However, in the ayah of zakah, Allah mentions them together. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين. Allah mentions 8 people that He gives zakat to. The first one is a faqir and the second one is a miskin. What's the difference? Here, because they mentioned together, they have different meaning. The ulama say a faqir is somebody who has less than half of what he needs. He has less than half of what he needs. And a miskin is somebody who has more than half but still not enough. Let's say a person needs, for him to live every month, he needs £2,000. Okay? A person has 700. Is he a faqir or a miskin? Huh? Faqir. If he has 1900, is he faqir or miskin? Miskin. If he has nothing, faqir. If he has 2100, no other two, right? Okay, therefore, right, so the same thing, Islam and Iman. Okay? Now, what is the difference between the two? Now, the Salaf have differed exactly in what is the difference between the two. Okay? And one answer that we'll give, and this is what Ibn Rajab mentions in his explanation, right, is that Islam, when you say to somebody, right, you talked about Islam, then it's referring to a person's outer actions. Because the Prophet, when he gave the pillars of Islam, what did he mention? He mentioned the 5 pillars. Apart from the first one, the other 4 are all actions. Salah, zakah, fasting, hajj. And therefore, Iman is referring to the inner beliefs. Okay, so when the words are together, then Islam is referring to the outer actions, whereas Iman is referring to the inner actions. Now, there is a bit of a difference. Some, the Salaf have said other things as well, but this is, you can say the most famous one that is mentioned now. So we'll just stick with that, inshallah. We'll stick with that, inshallah. And Talha, maybe an answer to what you're saying, because you could say, okay, if a person doesn't believe, then how can he, his actions won't benefit him. We say to that when we talk about that, then we don't talk about the completeness of that Iman. Right? I mean, a person has to have complete Iman. He has to have the minimum amount of belief which will allow him to be in the religion of Islam. That part he has to have. Otherwise, it wouldn't come under what we're talking about. Does that make sense? Yeah, so somebody says, look, I have Islam and not Iman, and he means that he doesn't have the inner belief, right? We say, look, what do you mean by the inner belief? If you mean complete Iman, then okay, that's fine. The differentiation that we mentioned is okay. But if somebody says, I don't believe in Allah at all, then we say, right, then that's not what we're talking about. Then you can't have Islam. So he has to have that minimum level of belief, which you're going to get to, inshallah. What is that minimum level of belief so that he enters into Islam in the first place? Okay, the next page, there's a question. I just mentioned to you that the Salaf differed in this issue, right? This issue, the difference in Islam and Iman, which subject does it come under? Fiqh, Hadith, or Aqidah, right? Now, there's a question. Did the Salaf differ in Aqidah? I've gathered here a number of statements. Let's read them, inshallah. Okay. Written here, I will mention a few statements of the scholars regarding this issue. One must try to holistically understand all of these statements and their intentions to come to the correct academic conclusion. What I mean by that is I mentioned different statements. Okay, you can't just read one statement and say, oh, that's my answer. Okay, you have to read all of them to come to the correct conclusion. That's something very important. That's what those people who normally deviate and those people who have incorrect beliefs, that's what they do. They ينظرون جزئيا ويحكمون كليا. They look at individual pieces of information and proofs, and then based upon those individual proofs, they give a general ruling, and they leave off a lot of other proofs which are there. Rather, Ahlul Sunnah, what do? They read everything, all the ayat, all the hadith, all the narrations, and then once they've read everything, then they come to the conclusion. Okay, so for example, for those that know the Murji'ah, they look at only those ayat, this issue of promises and rewards. They don't look at punishment. And the Khawarij and Mu'tazila just look at punishments. They don't look at the other type of ayat. So for that reason, they've erred when it comes to the issue of Iman. Ahlul Sunnah look at all of the ayat and they give a general ruling. Let's read some of these statements. The first is a statement of As-Sam'ani. As-Sam'ani said, what proves that the people of Hadith are upon the truth is if you were to research all of their books that they have authored, from the first of them until the last of them, the earlier scholars and the later scholars, which they are, who are from different places and times, and live far from one another. And sorry, I did this literally before Salah and didn't look over it. And in different areas of land, you will find that they all tread upon one path and methodology. They do not divert from the path. All their speech regarding the path is one, and their citations are one. You will not find differences between them in anything, no matter how small. Rather, if you gather everything which has been said upon their tongues and what they have transmitted from their predecessors, you will find that they have all come from one heart and upon one tongue. Is there a proof clearer than this for the truth? Okay. In his statement, what does he say? He says, if you look at the people, Ahlul Hadith, the people of Hadith, Ahlul Sunnah, from the early scholars until now, those in different countries, whether it's in Saudi, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's from anywhere, they're from Ahlul Sunnah. If you read all of their books, you'll find all of them are saying the exact same thing. They won't say different things. They'll all say the exact same thing. And you will not find that they differ in anything. That's what he said in the statement. He said that they don't differ, they all say the exact same thing. We have a statement of Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah after this. He said, the companions differed in many jurisprudence issues, and they are the most honorable of believers and most complete in their iman. However, alhamdulillah, they did not differ in one issue from the issues of al-asma wa sifat wal af'al. I.e., they didn't differ in one issue from when it comes to the names, attributes, or actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, The companions themselves differed in some of that, i.e. in some of the fiqh issues, but did not differ in aqa'id. Aqa'id yani aqidah. Ibn Taymiyyah said the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them, did not fight ever over a principle from the principles of Islam originally. And they did not differ in anything from the fundamentals of Islam, not about the attributes, not about qadr, not about asma and ahkam, nor in the issues of rulership. Okay, so far what we read, scholars are saying there's no difference in aqidah. Salaf never differed whatsoever. But now let's read some of the other statements of the same scholars. Right? It's very important that it's not enough, not academically correct for a person to get one statement just like that out of context, or one statement of a scholar without reading the rest of his works and just giving it as a general ruling. You have to read everything he said. So another statement of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, what does he say? He said the companions differed in creedal issues. Okay, he says they differed, such as the dead hearing the living. Can the dead hear the living? The dead being punished due to the crying of the family. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before dying, whilst unity and love remained between them. And they differed, but it wasn't, even though they differed in certain issues of aqidah, it did not, it wasn't a means or a cause for them to disunite or to have hatred or to talk badly about one another or anything like that. We have another statement of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. This one you have to write yourselves. I can't make it too easy for you. He says, لكن هذا مما يسوغ فيه الاجتهاد. However, this is from those issues where ijtihad can be done. Ijtihad, a scholar can come to his own conclusion. فإن من مسائل الدق في الأصول لا يكاد يتفق عليها الطائفة. Because the precise, minute issues, there is no group that will agree upon all of them. Any group that there is, whether Islamic or non-Islamic, right? Every person is not going to agree with every single person 100% every single small issue, right? Maybe some small things, but the very minute, small, the things that you just look over. So he says, إذ لو كان كذلك لما تنازع في بعضها السلف من الصحابة والتابعين. Because if that was the case, the case that even in the minute issues, they do not differ. He said, لما تنازع في بعضها السلف من الصحابة والتابعين. That some of the salaf from the Sahaba and Tabi'een would not have also differed in them. وقد ينكر الشيء في حال دون حال. And maybe you can refute someone in one situation but not in another situation, or rebuke someone in one situation not in another situation. وعلى شخص دون شخص. Or you rebuke a particular person but not another person who may have said the same thing due to who he is. وأصل هذا ما قد ذكرته في غير هذا الموضع. And the foundation of this I've mentioned in more than one place. أن المسائل الخبرية قد تكون بمنزلة المسائل العملية. That the issues of aqidah can be at the same level of the issues of action, the action-based issues, i.e. the issues of fiqh. وإن سميت تلك مسائل الأصول وهذه مسائل الفروع. Even some people call these foundational issues and fiqh, they call it furu', they call it the branches. فإن هذه تسمية محدثة. This is a innovative labeling. قسمها طائفة من الفقهاء المتكلمين, that some of the jurists and the mutakallimin gave this label to. Okay, and the last statement, Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah said, the statement that aqidah does not have any differences within it, unrestrictedly, is incorrect. So you can see the first few, right? You've read a lot. Okay, what can we see? The first few statements are saying what? There's no difference in aqidah whatsoever. And the next few statements are saying the Sahaba did differ. Right? What's the conclusion? Well, over here. Therefore, we can say the Salaf were upon an agreement in the foundational issues, whilst they had very little differences in the branches. Branches and secondary issues, i.e. when it comes to the main issues, the main primary foundational creedal issues, there's no difference whatsoever. When it came to affirming the names and attributes of Allah, they had no difference. When it came to qadr, no difference. When it came to iman, no difference whatsoever. But when it comes to a secondary issue, when you talk about secondary, talk secondary in aqidah itself. For example, did the Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Isra al-Mi'raj, did he see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? Some of the Sahaba differed. And some ulama say that the difference is in wording, not actual difference. But the point is, they differed. And from the Sahaba, there's only, I think, about 4 issues that you can find that they differed in. And from Tabi'een and Atba' Tabi'een, a little bit more. But the point being is that they're very few. the few compared to what they agreed upon. And those issues where they did differ, I mean, very minute, you know, they're not, I wouldn't say not important, because it's all part of the religion, but secondary issues that if a person did make a mistake in, it's not something that would cause him to deviate or anything like that. And from those issues is, what is the difference between Islam and Iman? What is the difference between Islam and Iman? After they believe in Iman, after they believe in the pillars of Iman, and what you have to believe regarding all those pillars and the other details and everything, what's the exact difference between the usage of these two words? They may have differed in them. So the summary of this answer, you know, if you want to make it very simple, did the Salaf differ when it comes to issues of Aqidah, issues of creedal beliefs? They did not differ when it came to the foundational issues, and they had very few differences when it comes to the secondary issues.
So who should we follow then in terms of the secondary issue?
In the secondary issue, right, you have to look into that issue. That so if it's the reason they differed is because maybe a hadith didn't reach a particular person, or something like that, then obviously without issue, difference of opinion, then you follow whatever you deem to be strongest, and that's not an issue whatsoever.
Even if it's different madhabs as well, they're not to say, you know, follow one madhab.
But the issue of madhabs, that's fiqh. It's not aqidah. Okay? So it's not aqidah. In aqidah, you don't find madhabs. You don't find, okay, this is the madhab Ibn Abbas in his belief. This is the madhab of Ibn Umar in his belief. You won't find it. In fiqh, you'll find it. Many issues. Ibn Abbas said this, Ibn Umar said this, Aisha said this. In fiqh, there's a lot. From the time of the Sahaba, no one can deny that. Likewise the Tabi'een, likewise Atba' Tabi'een, and so on. When it comes to aqidah, then in majority of the issues, especially the foundational issues, there was no difference whatsoever. And the only difference you will find, as we mentioned, are a few, and even those few are in the secondary issues. Right. We've now gone through the definition of Iman and the other issues regarding it. Now, there is another issue, right? Just before that, which one need to add? We did some important points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, you can add this over here. You can add this in the first point. When I mentioned the important points, add what I'm going to say there. And I mentioned what is Iman. At the end of it, what did I add? It increases the good deeds and it decreases the bad deeds. That is an issue pertaining to Iman, but it's not the actual definition of what Iman is. It's a phrase which tells us one of the issues regarding Iman. The reason the scholars add that on is because there are other sects who have when it comes to the issue, so they add it on so that a person can be upon clarity. But it's not the actual definition of what Iman exactly is. Right? Iman is the things that we mentioned, the belief and the statements on the tongues and the actions on the limbs. That's what Iman is. As for if you see it increasing and decreasing, then the scholars are saying no problem, right? Especially if you're teaching it to beginners and so on. But it's not exactly what it is. Okay, let's go to page number 164. Now, page 164, we are going to study some principles of Ahl Sunnah regarding Iman. Some principles of Ahl Sunnah regarding Iman. The first principle, which is something that we already indicated towards, is that Iman is speech and action. Iman is speech and action. We already kind of mentioned this when it came to the definition, but we wanted to separate this because I want to talk about it a bit more by explaining, a bit more what it means, and also mentioning the proofs. Because I give you a definition, you may turn around and say, okay, where's the proof? Where have you got this definition from? Okay, and I'll mention them now, inshallah. Now, what does it mean, action? Iman is speech and action. We explained what that means, right? But this principle, we mentioned this here as a separate principle, because there's a lot of people now, and this originally is taken from the Murji'ah, a group called the Murji'ah. And even if people don't call themselves that group, what the statement that they say is the belief of this group, which is that they say that you can't judge me and Iman is in my heart. Iman is in my heart. They limit Iman to what? Just what is in the heart and not is what on the tongues or upon the limbs. Okay, some might add the tongue as well, but they don't add what the actions of the limbs. So they'll turn around and say that, okay, I don't pray, but you know, my iman is, don't worry about my iman, that's between me and Allah. I've got Allah iman, don't worry about it. Okay? And they'll try to justify them not doing actions by saying this. And that is something that goes against the statements of Salaf. In fact, it goes against the consensus of the scholars. It goes against the consensus of the scholars. Let's read what it says here. An example of this, right? If you go for a job interview, you can say, I've got these qualifications. They're going to ask you, give us a proof, give us a reference, give us someone that we can authenticate what you are saying, right? So, without those actions, the person doesn't do those actions. The reality is, either his iman is deficient or he has no iman at all. His iman is nullified, depending on which actions he leaves off. If a person never prays, right, then he should fear that he has no iman at all. Because the Prophet said, Al-ahdu alladhi baynana baynahum as-salah faman tarakaha faqad kafar. The difference between us and disbelievers is the prayer. So whoever taraka, whoever leaves it off, faqad kafar, he's disbelieved. Right? So how can a person never pray, say, I have iman, and the Prophet is saying is that he's disbelieved. Right? So actions are very important. And that's why this principle is very important. Right? What does it say here? It says, there are many proofs for this principle. Ibn al-Qayyim said, for this principle, or for this point, there are close to 100 proofs from the book and Sunnah. The book, yani the Quran and Sunnah. We will mention proofs from the Quran, Sunnah, narrations of the Salaf, and consensus of the scholars. Right. We'll start with a few ayat. Now, for all of these ayat and all these hadith, I mentioned all of the references for you. Okay? But I've not written some of the ayat there. I put the reference there. Right? And I can't write out every single ayah, that's too easy, right? I put the reference there, so if you don't have time to write it in class, later on you can write it out, inshallah. The first proof is the first 11 ayat from Surah Al-Mu'minun. What does Allah say in Surah Al-Mu'minun? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and by the way, everyone has to memorize at least one proof from each point that we mentioned, minimum one. Okay, next lesson I'm going to test you, inshallah. The first is the beginning of Surah Al-Mu'minun. What does Allah say in the beginning of Surah Al-Mu'minun? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Verily those that have iman, mu'minun, plural of mu'min, they are successful. Verily those who have iman are successful. Then in the next 10 ayat, Allah mentions the characteristics of these people who have iman. What did he say? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Those that have khushu', humility, concentration in their salah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Those who stay away from idle talk. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Those that give their zakah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. Those that protect their private parts. And so on until the end of the 11th ayah. All of these things that I mentioned, salah, zakah, protecting your private parts, staying away from idle talk. What are these? Are these beliefs or are they actions? All of them are actions. All of them are actions. So how does Allah define to us those who have iman? By mentioning actions. Meaning, if a person doesn't have actions, then he's not from the mu'minun. He's not from those that have iman. Right. The next one. I put the English, but the Arabic is very easy. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will not waste your iman. Now this is the story of when the Qibla was changed. In the beginning of Islam, they used to face Masjid al-Aqsa, right? Then the Qibla got changed when they moved to Medina, and they had to now face the Kaaba in Mecca. Hence we pray to Mecca, right? Now some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they feared, they said, look, we've been praying Salah in the wrong direction. Is our Salah accepted all these years? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought down this ayah and he said, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will not waste your iman. I.e., وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ صَلَاتَكُمْ. Allah will not waste the salahs that you've already prayed. Okay? So you notice here, what has Allah, how is he titled, how is he labeled salah? What has he called it? He called it iman. All the salah that you've prayed, Allah will not waste it. But look how he said it. And Allah will not waste your iman. So Allah called a physical action that a person does, which is salah, he called it iman. Showing that iman has to have action. It's not just a belief that a person has. Then the third ayah, the third one I wrote for you, إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله. Verily the mu'minun, now it says here the true believers, يعني mu'minun, those have iman. Verily those have iman are whom? Those who believe in Allah and His Messenger without doubting. ثم وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم. And then they, those are language, actually muted. And they strive, i.e. they fight with their wealth and with themselves in the way of Allah. I.e. they go to battle. Now fighting in battle, is that with the heart or is that physical action that you do? That's a physical action. Yeah, no one sits at home and be like, yeah, I've killed someone. I believe that in my heart and class. Right? It's a physical action that you do. Right? And Allah, how does He describe these people? إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. They are those that have iman. How easy would that be if you sit at home? Just think of it when it happens. Right? Okay, there are some ayat. Before we mention the hadith from the Sunnah,
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Okay, from the Sunnah, number of ahadith, and the ahadith are written out for you. The first one is the hadith I was referring to before. Iman is 70 or 60 odd parts. The best of it is saying La ilaha illallah. The lowest is removing something harmful from the street, and modesty is a part of Iman. In here you can see when the Prophet mentions different parts of Iman, what does he say? Saying La ilaha illallah. That's on your tongue. The lowest is removing something harmful from the street. That's a physical action that you do. And modesty is a part of Iman. That's an action of the heart. The second hadith, hadith Wafd Abdul Qais, again, same thing. When the Prophet was asked about, when he asked him, do you know what Iman in Allah is? Look at the end. He says, is the Shahada, and then to pay zakah, to offer the prayers, to observe fasting, and to pay the khumus. Khumus is 1/5 of the war booty that a person gains. But look, when the Prophet said, do you know what Iman is? He mentioned salah and zakah and fasting. The third, the Prophet says, at-tuhuru shatrul iman. Purification is half of faith, half of Iman. Right? So purification, it refers to both purification of a person's beliefs from shirk and bid'ah and so on, but also purification in terms of doing wudu, keeping yourself clean, and that's physical actions. And the fourth, Prophet says, the most complete of believers in Iman, those believers that have complete Iman, are those who have the best manners. The manners is an action that you do. All these ahadith you can see when the Prophet mentions Iman, he is mentioning actions with them. From the statements of the Salaf, Ammar ibn Yasir, he says, whoever gathers three things has gathered Iman. Justice from yourself. What does it mean, justice from yourself? What that means is that a person, and when he ponders over his own actions, he is just, and he acknowledges, when he's done wrong, and he rectifies his actions, and so on. The second thing he says, spreading the salam to the world, i.e., any Muslim that you meet, give them salam, whether you know them or you don't, and spending in poverty, meaning even if you're struggling yourself, you still give charity, and so on. All of these are actions. And lastly, proof from ijma', from consensus of the scholars. Consensus has been transmitted from more than one person, such as Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, Bukhari, Ibn Hatim, Al-Awza'i, Al-Tabari, Ibn Abd al-Barr, Ibn Taymiyyah, and others. May Allah have mercy upon all of them. Okay, we'll mention some of their statements. You have to write these down. Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he said, Imam Bukhari's statement is very profound. He says, لقيت أكثر من 1000 رجل من العلماء في الأمصار. I met more than 1,000 scholars. I've met more than 1,000 men from the scholars in the different lands. I met more than 1,000 men from the scholars from different lands. And I did not find, فما وجدت أن أحدا, I did not find that even one اختلف في أن الإيمان قول وعمل. That even one differed, that Iman is speech and action. I did not find that even one differed, that Iman is speech and action. He says, I met more than 1,000 men from the scholars in different lands, and I did not find that even one differed, that Iman is speech and actions. Al-Awza'i, he said, وَكَانَ مَنْ مَضَى مِنْ سَلَفِينَ, and those who came before from our predecessors, and those who came before from our predecessors, لا يفرقون بين الإيمان والعمل, do not differentiate between Iman and actions. Al-Awza'i, who preceded him, the Tabi'een and the Sahaba, he's saying they did not differentiate between al-Iman wal-Amal, Iman and actions, wal-Amal min al-Iman, and actions being from Iman, wal-Iman min al-Amal, and Iman being from actions. And he kept repeating in different ways, trying to prove the point. He said that those scholars that came before us, from our predecessors, did not differentiate between Iman and action, and the action is from Iman, the Iman is from action. And the last statement is a statement of Ibn Abdul Barr, where he says, أجمع أهل الفقه والحديث, the people of fiqh and hadith have all agreed على أن الإيمان قول وعمل, that Iman is speech and action. The Iman is speech and action. Okay, so I think that is enough proof to prove the first point, which is that Iman has to consist of speech and actions. The second point, very important. According to Ahlul Sunnah, Iman is not one block and it just stays. Rather, it has different parts and it fluctuates. Sometimes it goes high, sometimes it goes low, right? It says here, this issue does not have any ambiguity in any way, shape, or form. Not Islamically, from the Islamic proofs, nor intellectually, nor from one's own senses. Yeah. A person himself feels that his Iman goes up and his Iman goes down. Right? In Ramadan, it goes up. Outside Ramadan, it's a bit lower. Right? So this is an issue which is clear cut. But again, you'll find people that have deviated in this. And by the way, you may think that, why is this, such an important issue? Those people who have deviated in this are people like ISIS and all these terrorist groups, right? Because they believe Iman is one thing. They don't believe that Iman goes up and down. They say anyone commits a major sin, right? Iman goes completely. He's no longer a Muslim, therefore you can kill him. That's why they kill Muslims as well. So you can see all these extremes. Where do they come from? Not correctly understanding the religion of Islam. That's why it's really important to understand these issues correctly. It says here again, the proofs are many. We will mention proofs from the Quran, Sunnah, narration of Salaf, and consensus. Proofs from the Quran. Firstly, in 6 places within the Quran, the word increase has clearly been used for Iman, right? In 6 ayat. I've written out the first ayah. The other ayat, I've put the references, you can add them in yourselves. The first one is, وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ زِيَادَةً زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When his ayat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ayat are recited upon them, they increase in Iman. When the believers hear the ayat of Allah, the Iman increases. So look, clearly mentioned the wording of increase. Number 2, it says there are also ayat that show an increase in Iman indirectly. So the other ayat that talk about increase, but it's not using the exact word Iman, it's using other words. For example here, وَالَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا زَادَهُمْ هُدًى وَآتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُمْ. As for those who are rightly guided, He increases them in guidance. Okay, so it's not clearly mentioned Iman, but it can be understood that if somebody is increased in guidance, then he's increased in Iman. His level of Iman or his religion has gone higher. As for the Sunnah, then the Prophet said, and the first 2 hadith we already mentioned, the most complete of believers in Iman are those that have the best manners, most complete Iman. I.e., there are some believers who have complete Iman, higher level of Iman, and there are other believers who have less Iman. The next hadith, Islam has 60 odd or 70 odd parts. The best is saying La ilaha illallah. The best, i.e., the highest. And the lowest is removing something hard from the street, and modesty is a part of Iman, showing that there's a high and that there's a low. The third is a hadith for Islam. He says, when you see something evil, then remove it from with your hands. If you can't, then with your with your hands, and if you can't, then from your tongue. And if you're not able to remove with your tongue, then at least with your heart. I.e., believe in your heart that is wrong. Then what does the Prophet say right at the end? And that is the weakest form of Iman, i.e., the lowest form of Iman. So it shows that if Iman has a low, it also has a high part as well. It says here, note every proof that proves that Iman increases is also a proof that it decreases. This is because everything can accept an increase, which can accept an increase can also accept a decrease. So if a person's Iman can increase, then it can also decrease. There are a couple of statements, but we don't have time to mention those statements. Imam, in the beginning of next lesson, I'll start off with these. Statements, inshallah. Likewise, proofs from the narrations of the Salaf and proofs of it. Okay, everything's written out. I can read this part. Proofs from the narrations of the Salaf. It says here, this has been mentioned by many of the companions and the Tabi'een. Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr gathers 10 statements of the companions in his book. He's got a book titled Asbabu Ziyadat al-Iman wa Nuqsanihi. The ways of how to increase Iman and decrease, or the ways how Iman increases and decreases. Asbabu Ziyadat al-Iman wa Nuqsanihi. From the statements is a statement of Umar ibn Mas'ud, Mu'adh ibn Rawha, where they say, come, let's increase our Iman. Like as Umar ibn Habib al-Khatmi, he said, Iman increases and decreases. It was said to him, how does it increase and decrease? He says, when we remember Allah, it increases, and when we forget Allah, it decreases. Like as Shaykh al-Islam, he says that all of the Sahaba has been authentically proven that they say Iman increases and decreases, and nobody differed. And then the last point is that there's ijma' consensus on this issue as well. So with that also shows what? It shows that Iman increases and it decreases. Inshallah, next lesson, we'll in the beginning of next lesson, we'll take issues of how to increase a person's Iman, how does the Iman decreases, and other issues regarding Iman, inshallah. And I'll also mention the statements that we missed over here. Just a reminder, next week there's no lesson. So inshallah, we'll continue the week after that, bi-idhnillah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.